Welcome to Climate Quickies, bite-sized nuggets of climate goodness from our TEDxLondon experts in under 10 minutes.
Ben, we have made it to the end of 2025.
We've survived another one. We've made it.
Made it.
I'm exhausted. This has been a long year.
That is what I think everyone feels. Yeah. That this year has really, it's both been, I mean, I know this is such a cliche to say, but it's both been lightning fast and also how has so much stuff happened in 1 year.
Yeah, time feels like it's always getting faster, but this also feels like a crazy amount of stuff to have crammed into 1 year. It feels like I'm remembering things that have happened earlier in the year and they feel like they were like 2 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm like, oh yeah, we did that back in 2023.
I was just reflecting on like how many amazing people we've spoken to this year.
Can you imagine?
And all the places we've been. And I can't quite believe it. Like it really does feel like 2 years ago. Like I was going through it. Like you went to Nairobi.
Nuts in and of itself. Yeah, crazy.
I went to Vancouver.
Immense, yeah.
Immense. We went to Oxford together.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not to mention like we did a mini series this year for the first time.
Curious on crime. Very interesting.
That was one of my highlights.
Yeah,
of the
definitely.
Year because so much is done remotely these days.
Yeah.
And just being able to be with each other in a space and
actually
record.
sit in a studio and feel each other's vibes and like also discover stuff in real time is like a very intense experience. Yeah.
There were some incredible episodes. That was really a highlight for me. What about you? What else has been like some highlights for you this year?
You know, I think Nairobi was a big highlight for me because I don't know if I'm like going to make sense here, but sometimes I feel like the ideas that we talk about and the experiences that I'm living are two very separate things. Do you know what I mean? Like people will talk about things like going back to nature and I'm always like, that must be so cool. But like I'm not actually in nature, and so being in Nairobi was crazy because I was fully immersed in like what was actually happening, and it was like people were talking about geothermal technology and I was literally seeing it in real time, and also again, like anytime you go to a TED conference, you're not just hearing ideas, like you're meeting the people, you're spending time with them, you're eating lunch with these people. And so like breaking bread with someone and sitting and experiencing the fullness of who they are is like a very different type of experience. So I think that was like an amazing time for me.
You know, I was thinking about my highlights. Obviously, going to Vancouver is always really fun and we got to meet lots of people and be with them. But I really loved the live recording we had when we did that partnership with Earth% and with Climate Spring of the event they had back earlier in the year about big oil.
Yeah.
Because we got to hear from one of my, not just one, but we got to hear about from a few of my like faves, Tori, Tessa, but Amy Westerveld, who is just this incredible investigative journalist. Her podcast Drilled was one of the podcasts that we kind of, when we were starting this whole thing, was just so inspiring to us. And so that was just really cool to get to hear that event. And then the other one I think for me that was really, I obviously loved the live event we did with David Lan and Days and Love Sega, and that was all amazing. Yeah. But I think, do you remember the podcast we recorded with Nizar Zouabi?
Don't even joke, because I was thinking, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that I really like that one, but I did actually learn so much in that podcast. That was crazy.
Okay, we need to stop reminiscing. We could do it all day.
Yeah, we've got something to do.
So I guess to say that our amazing team here, well, they've crunched the numbers, right?
Yeah.
And we felt like it would be a really good time to take a moment and look back at the guests we've had this year that have resonated with all of you.
Okay, so this is our Climate Curious Wrapped 2025. And we've sifted through all of the data to see what you are all connecting with.
There are a few themes that keep popping up, and one big one is stories around nature and biodiversity.
And a great example of this was our most listened to episode of 2025, Gustavo Blanco, talking about the work of the Uru Uru team in Bolivia cleaning up their polluted lake water.
This was a really tactile, solutions-based story and really exciting. It's utilising indigenous wisdom, finding a novel and natural way to detoxify and clean lake water that was polluted by mining and urbanisation.
It's pretty mad, actually. So in case you missed it, here's Gustavo on what the Totaro read actually is and how it works.
We are just a group of youth indigenous leaders that care about the environment, and we wanted to take action. So we found out ways in which we could do that. And we looked up at the heritage that we've been given by many indigenous communities throughout our history, including the use of unique plant, which is called totora. This plant is very resilient in the Andean areas of Bolivia and is able to consume the pollutants, the heavy metals that are on this lake, like zinc and other metals that contaminate the lake, as these were, the plant is able to consume it as these were nutrients, and is able to store it on their leaves to later be removed and to later help the contamination process in the lake. So this process is not really a conventional method of decontamination, but has been proven by research done in the area by researchers on the ecological area to be effective.
Such a great success story and really unbelievable how powerful those plants are. Next in our list of themes that resonated were stories on the intersection of climate and culture.
So we had plenty of guests this year that fit this mould, but one of our top episodes was with John Marshall on how climate crashed the Super Bowl.
Taking something as culturally significant as the Super Bowl and using that platform for climate was a really cool case study in climate communications on a crazy large scale.
And as far as the global stage goes, it doesn't get much bigger than that. And the coolest bit about it was that it wasn't just some techno-futuristic mumbo-jumbo climate ad. The idea at its core was actually about a mother's love. So here's John on what they did.
We got ranked a top 10 Super Bowl ad by the New York Times. And so that was exciting for our team, particularly because we beat Doritos, which was great. And so what makes a good ad for that? I think a great Super Bowl ad is something that tells a true story in a way that appeals to something that people care about. And our message was about the kids that we love. Interestingly, the way you usually win the Super Bowl sweepstakes is you get yourself a great spokesperson, Catherine O'Hara or Roger Federer, and you do something that's really funny, but also really insightful, or you have a talking baby. And climate change isn't that funny, is it? And so what we didn't have the spokespeople, we didn't have the talking babies, but what we did have, we thought was a story that deeply resonates. We all love our children. So this is a uniting idea, and I think most importantly, and the data says it's bigger than politics, bigger than special interests, something that really appeals, something we all hold deeply, and apparently bigger than our love of salty snacks. And so it was a very effective ad, and I think effective because what is great marketing? Great marketing is a story about the truth that's really well told.
If you haven't heard this or any of the episodes we're featuring today, then you should definitely go back and give them a listen.
Also, we've had loads of people reach out with really helpful and encouraging messages. So if you have any thoughts that you want to share with us, then feel free. Links to that and the episodes featured are in the description.
Moving on. Another theme that we touched on many times this year and one that you all responded to was the law.
Ooh. Looking at the plays, the streams or the listens, the law as a tool for climate action clearly hit a nerve with you all. Stories of crime and climate as well as the people being held account for their crimes.
And unsurprisingly, our mini-series on green crimes with Dr. Julia Shaw was a standout for the year.
Getting the psychological analysis on people who commit climate crimes from Julia was so fascinating, and I'm not surprised these episodes were so well received.
Right? A great example of Julia's insight was her explaining the psychology of what motivates corporate whistleblowers.
I think the least kind answer to that is that you want to have a lesser consequence because you know that this is now unraveling and your name might come up, and at least this way you get to control the narrative and you get to come out looking like a good guy. And these were all men, as far as I know. Right. In fact, environmental crimes, much like crime in general, almost entirely men. I think it's about power and who's in engineering and, all these kinds of things. But in terms of the whistleblower, who becomes a whistleblower and how they are talking to people about their crimes, which ultimately is what happened. A lot of it is trying to save face. A lot of it is expressing the rationalization, expressing it to somebody else, telling them your reasons because they're true, right? It's not like people are just lying about it. They are trying to share, I did this because, I had reasons. I didn't just do this because I'm a bad person. And so I can understand the need to do that. The kinder side of that if you want to go sort of, these are heroes, because we absolutely need people to do this, and including people who are involved. Otherwise, we won't get to the bottom of especially corporate crimes, but lots of different kinds of problems. And in those situations, sometimes you also have someone who just says, this is wrong, and I actually want this to be investigated, and I need this to stop. And either I was involved from the beginning or from some later point, but I think that's the more kind of like, I actually feel guilty about this, and it's not just that I want the legal consequences for myself to be less.
We could go on all day with episodes that struck a chord with listeners, but we're going to finish with one final episode from Atmos editor-in-chief and fellow podcaster Willow Defaba.
That was definitely one of my favourite episodes, right? Willow's insight into communication and storytelling is definitely a huge part of her success. And as well as many of the other directions our conversation took, the importance of arts and creativity in sharing ideas was key.
Let's hear from Willow herself.
Climate has long had a storytelling problem. It's had a, it's always been very documentary. It's always been very, and I don't want to say that in any kind of condemning or critical way, because I grew up reading National Geographic religiously, and I think aside from that, people associated climate change coverage with data, and that's hugely important. And also I think that storytelling is what makes us human, right? It's the arts always capture our humanity. And if the climate crisis is a crisis of humanity, then we need to reach people at that level, right? And so we really wanted to use the arts and use creativity as a way to speak to people's humanity around this issue, to make them feel. And because that's what art has always done. We love these stories, like these epic stories and myths and fairy tales, right? That get told and told again in different movies, and we're living in the greatest story of human history, arguably.
Well, that's it. We've hit the end of 2025 and a little reminisce.
What a year it has been. Thank you for all of the support and the love that you've shown to the podcast. We love you all, and we hope you have a lovely and a restful holiday season.
And I know you're going to really miss us, so don't worry, because you can join us at our first live in-person event in 2026 on the 11th of February in London at the Conduit.
Exciting.
I know. We'll be taking a look at the history and the future of climate progress and in the company of some amazing climate OGs, climate originals. More info via the link in the description, where you can also book your free tickets.
And remember,
Stay curious.